bad. No worries. Yeah, if at any point anybody doesn't think I'm recording or anything, just hey, you want to cover something else or anything, definitely please interject. Want this to be as interactive as possible. All right. So yesterday we did school interface 2. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fork this over to my local GitHub. So Tom Preet, school interface 2. And the reason why it's -1 is because I already have a school interface 2 named on this repository or on my GitHub. So it added the 1. So I go to the green code button, copied it over. Let's see if all right. So I got list everything out. I'm currently in school interface 1. You can continue to build upon school interface 1 if you'd like, but I like to keep things separately just so I can see snapshots of what each challenge required me to do. So not git clone. Let's zoom in a little bit. Git clone school interface 2. List everything out. There is my school interface 2, like so. So I can cd into school interface 2, list everything out, and open up into a new VS Code window. First thing I want to do is just review the code because this code might be different. So I've got classes. So name, age, person, role. So here they put the role in the person class. I don't think I did that before. So if I want to, I can go ahead and just copy over my code from yesterday. So I think my person class looked like that. If I go to school, they've got staff objects. All right, well, let's actually look at the student class first. So I'm going to look at the student class. So they just have a class method literally called objects, which, yeah, I don't know if I like that, that it's called objects, because it really, like, you should describe your methods and your variables specifically what it is doing. And I understand that, you know, they're called objects because they're getting objects. We could refactor this and just make this a standalone method outside of a class, and that just takes in maybe a path that as an argument, so we can use it's like a helper function or helper method. But let's just stick with what we've got here. But I'm going to use my class method instead. So mine looks something like that. And I imported everything at the top, like so. I'm going to do that to the staff as well. All right. All right. And now I got to go into school and then set up objects. I'm going to split the screen there. So I've got school, so I can inspect my student and staff classes. So all staff, student, all students. And I think person I can leave. I can actually just get rid of this now, because that was just for an example. So now let's just run this just to make sure everything is working. I'm going to also just print just the school name as well. I think that's what it's called. Yep. All right. So list everything out and then do Python runner. All right. So we've already got some errors going on. Let's see what's going on here. Looks like I should have just copied over the entire class from my old code, because there's probably some differences. I think that was. There we go. Think everything might work. Nope. All right, what's going on here? Let's debug this. So runner line 3, school.line 8, student for row. Name, age, role, pat name. Oh, is it because of the order it went in? Name. Let's CD down, CD into school interface 1, just so I can actually see classes, code, student, and staff. Let's bring that over here. All right. So that should, let's go back to school interface 2. Clear the terminal. All right, there we go. So where I was copying it from wasn't identical. So, all right, cool. Now we're set with something that works from the code from last week or from yesterday. If you wanted to use your code or if you wanted to use the starter code, doesn't really matter. Just whatever you prefer. All right. What questions do you have about just getting that up and running? All right. So let's go down here. So release 1. Let's think about our program from the user's point of view. The first thing we want to see when the program starts is a menu that lists all the actions they can take. So something like that. All right. So when I run that runner file, I should get a little interface like this that lists these options. So let's create our menu first, and then we can work down the list and implement each feature one at a time. We'll start by putting this logic in our runner file. We can always pull it out later. All right. So it's telling us to do something like that. So in our runner, so I'm just going to bring the student, staff. I don't think we'll need the person anymore. So I just added that print statement there. Let's go ahead and clear and run that file again. So we get something like this. So we get that little interface with that print. You don't have to do it like this. If you wanted to format it without the ends, you can. You could do something like that too. That still works. I'll just keep it like that for right now. All right. So we have our menu. What else do we need? So from the above code, it might look strange, but when you run it, it prints it nice because we've got that /n Right now we have a program that prints a menu that exists, not very helpful. We want to give that user the option to select one of the menu items. We can do that with the input. So we'll just do mode equals input like so. I'm just going to print mode down here at the bottom. If I clear the terminal, run that runner file again, what would you like to do? I'll click, 3, and it prints 3 down here. All right. What questions do you have about grabbing some user input? All right. All right. So we're going to have our user choose options by their number. If they enter 1, we'll list all the students. If they enter 2, they can view a specific student's info, etc. All right. So if we can do if mode equals 1, else pass. So if we run that, we'll do school dot, what do you say? List students. Run that. But we haven't created this method yet. So we'll have to go to the school and actually write that method. So inside the school, we'll do def list students, takes in self. And what do we want to list it as? So something like this. All right. So if we do that, we can do like for student and self.students print student. I just want to see what that looks like. So I'm going to clear the terminal, enter 1. Uh-oh. And it just exited. Can anybody tell me what happened? I'm going to call on somebody. So Steve, go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Is it because it's not an int, the input?
Input is not an int.
Is it
so?
Like did it just stop?
Let's check that. So if I do 1, so it is a string class, but I'm trying to compare a number. So just remember, anything you grab from the input method is a string, even if you type in a number. So if I go ahead and do that now, so I created this mode equals the number or a string of the number 1, run that, click 1, I get each student object when I'm printing each student. So what I wanted to print something like that, and I can see a student. So how can I grab? Let's actually open up the data of the students. So it doesn't look like I have an ID, like an index, I would say. So like index 1 or ID 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can use enumerate. So for IDX and student and enumerate and pass in self.students. Let's expand that a little bit. I can print, do an F string, index period, then student dot name. And what was the other one? Student dot school ID.
Yeah, school ID.
See if that works or print something. School ID. So it doesn't have an attribute school ID. So all students, I can look at the student and see what I'm actually calling that. Did I call it school ID or student? Oh,
Student IDs in one, school in the other.
yeah. All right. It was school ID in the file, but I renamed it to student ID in the actual class. So if I run that, there we go, except we want it to start at 1, not 0. So I can index +1. All right. Cool. Any questions about list students method and how we did this part?
Why isn't it self.student.name?
It's a good question. So if I was representing if it was an instance variable, self.student, but what's the instance variable is self.student, which is an array of objects. So I'm referencing this student from the enumerate, and I can call this whatever I want. And I can reference whatever I want, like so. So this isn't necessarily referencing an instance. I mean, it is an instance, but we don't have to, we're not accessing it via like an instance variable. It's just like a normal variable.
If you just printed the information in self.students, it would not print correctly, right?
So yeah, if you just did print self.students, it'd be a list of student objects, like so.
Yeah.
So now we have to view a single student. So if we do else, is it else if or elif? Elif. I've just been working in Ruby all day, so yeah. Equals 2. So if I view an individual student by its ID, if I click 2, now I have to grab the student ID, so I can do another input. Enter student ID, like so. And I'm just going to print student ID just to see, I can make sure that part's all working. So if I do 2, enter student ID 1, 2, 3, 4, and now it prints 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. All right. So now I can run like school dot was it? Oh yeah, student equals school dot find student by ID, and I pass in that student ID. And I still have to write this method. So I'm back in the school. So def find student by ID, takes in self as the first parameter, and then student underscore ID. And here I can loop through the students array, look at each student ID, just kind of like what I'm doing here. If the student ID matches the input student ID, there we found our student. And if it loops through the entire thing and it doesn't find the student, it will just return like there is no student with the ID of some ID. So I could say for student in self.students, if student dot student underscore ID equals student ID. I can just return that student. And then I can just return an F string. There is no student with the ID of student ID. So let's run that again. So 2, I don't know any of the students' IDs. 1, 3, 3, 4, 5. So it just exited because I added that student. So it's actually print that student first, print student, clear. 2, 1, 3, 3, 4, 5. We have our student object right here. But what's the one way we can, instead of printing the student object, because this isn't very helpful, what's that dunder method to make a student or to make an object look pretty when I print it?
Under
Under
STR.
string.
All right, let's see. So in my student class, I'm gonna do def dunder string self. And what do we need that to look like? Oh, so we have the dunder string method. Oh, it's right. It tells us right here. So something like that. I can just return. I'm gonna do not whatever I want. So instead of Lisa, it'll be student.name. Oh no, I'm sorry. Self.name, and this is going to be an F string. Self.age. Self.student ID. So let's try this again. 2, 1, 3, 3, 4, 5. And there we go. So we print that. All right. It looks like Lisa is capitalized. Is it upper? Does anybody know how to do the upper? Is it dot upper or is it upper?
Name dot
Dot
upper.
upper. It would,
Dot-
yeah, it'd be named dot upper and then your parentheses.
Cool. Thank you. Let's run that again. 2, 1, 3, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Is there a capitalize? I guess it doesn't matter. I'm an idiot. So we can just literally say like age and ID if that's the case. There we go. Any
Okay, I've got a
questions?
quick,
Yeah.
quick question about the STR.
Yep.
Nothing. I've seen in a lot of places where they're representing the object using the REPR, the represent. And it seems like it does exactly the same thing. You still have to format a string to show what you want it to print out. Can you just talk a little bit what the difference of those two might be, or
Oh,
pros and cons?
oh man, what? So what is? I can't remember off the top of my head. Repr does like another. So string just visually represents, like visually displays whatever you want in a string. Where Repr, it does something else in addition to that. And I can't remember off the top of my head. And if anybody knows, but they're
This page
essentially,
I'm on says that the difference is string returns user-friendly descriptions of an object and represented to return developer-friendly string representation. So it has to do with what information you want out of it. I've got a very detailed page I'll post in the chat.
Awesome. Did you post that in Charlie?
I just threw it in the Zoom chat. I can throw it in the
Zoom
Charlie
chat.
one.
No, you can just, what's the Zoom chat?
I haven't finished reading it. I was just starting now.
Yeah, yeah, it was like something like really like not very, it was like, okay. User-friendly object. I don't know necessarily what developer friendly means. But I thought it actually like changed. Okay. Yeah, there's not like a big difference. Like you can use either or and they'll do the same thing. But typically the less, I always generally just use str just because I know it doesn't, it's like, as they said, it's a little more user friendly. Anyway.
Okay, they both, for everything I've tried to do, they both have been interchangeable. The reason I started using one or the other was I wasn't sure, like if I want to have a function that prints out different things, like let's say I just want to print out all the instance methods using string, like if I call the object, but if I wanted to do it with something else, I wasn't sure if I could have two like def dunder string methods, or if I needed to have something else.
No, yeah, I think you'd have to do something else. Yeah, I don't know if like an actual use case or why you'd have to have something visually represented two different ways. I mean, I can see that, but in like actual programming, there probably isn't a use case for that. But yeah. All right.
Hey, Tom.
Yep.
So you created the dunder string method in the school class, right?
In the student class.
Sorry, in the student class. Yeah. So I ended up doing it in the school class because I read the requirements a little bit too quickly. Can you, yeah, on the school class, student by ID. Can you talk a little bit about how the find student by ID is getting the dunder string method from the school dunder string method?
Yeah. So I pass in a student ID and I loop through the self.students array or list, which is coming from up here, which is grabbing all the student instances. So I've got a list of student objects. And so when I loop through and iterate and grab an individual student and return that student and then print it out, this is a student instance. And anytime I print a student instance, instead of just printing that ugly, object or whatever that looks like, where'd it go? Instead of printing like a student object, they'll print it as this formatted string.
Okay, because I like explicitly told it. Like I said, I accidentally did it in the school class, and then I created a dunder string within that, and then I passed that object to the find student ID. So I mean, it accomplishes the same thing, but I'm just wondering how it knew to just grab that formatted string.
Because I'm grabbing a student instance. So this is that student object right here, what it's returning. And then I'm printing that student instance.
I see. Okay. It's okay. I see. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right, and then does anybody else have any other questions?
Just looking over my notes for OS path, I'm kind of forgetting some things. I didn't take good enough notes. Could you? Yeah, that line, those 2 lines right there. Can you
Yep.
just kind of explain what they're doing?
So this OS path finds the direct, essentially it finds the absolute path to where the student file is. So that's what this finds, the absolute path, and this finds the directory name, and this file is associated with this file name. So this finds the absolute path to this student.py file, which equals my path. And I can print that, my path. So this is where this student file is located. It's located in the directory of classes inside of school interface 2. And then here, this just joins the current path, which is to classes right here. And then it also says, all right, now how do I get to the student CSV file? And so it's just appending or joining that together. So it's doing classes slash dot dot up to data, then into the student, into the data directory, into the student CSV. So if we're to do that, run that, you can see finds where that student file is located at, and then it's like, all right, from the student file, how do I get to the students .csv?
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right.
So with that OS, we notice if you use pandas, you can go ahead and within pandas, you can put in the exact path.
Yeah.
So you don't need the OS. So is that just like a shortcoming of Python if you're just working?
It's not a shortcoming of Python. It's just a feature of pandas.
It almost seems like it's strange that Python wouldn't have that just built in, that you'd have to import it just to go up a directory.
Right.
Seems kind of weird.
All right. My wife is pounding on the door. I guess she forgot her key. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break or 11-minute break and be back at 6:25, and we'll continue with record on this computer. So we've implemented 2 of our features. One problem we can fix before we're done today is the fact that our program quits out after one action. What we want to do, user to be able to view multiple students in a sessions. How can we use a loop to include this functionality while add code to the runner so that after showing the list of students or data from a single, the menu displays again. All right. So how did y'all do that?
I did a while loop.
Okay. So equals, how did you do that? So while.
So I set like, what did I do? I set like true, false. And
yeah.
on 5, I set the loop to false.
All right. So I'll just say, well, start is true. I guess we can something like that. And then elif mode equals 5. What is it? Start equals false. So let's see if this will work. So when we start it, well, while this is true, it's gonna come into here. All right, and it's gonna go through this. And hopefully we can do multiple runs of that. Let's actually delete the prints. Quit. Run that. So I'm going to list all the students. All right, now what I'd like to do, so I can see all the students, view an individual students, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see Lisa. If I wanted to see another one, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 4, 5, 6. Did I already do that one? No, 1, 3, 3. I can see Kim. And then if I do click 5, it quits. And that concludes school interface 2. And do get add everything, get status. All right, it's got these pi caches that I don't want. So I can do a clear get reset to reset, remove everything from the staging area. Create a get ignore. Run that pi cache in there. Pi cache is now grayed out. And then just do get add, get status, get commit, instructor solution, then get push origin master. And there we go. You can kind of see if I do a quick refresh, it's been updated 12 seconds ago. Create a quick pull request, new pull request. So in the part-time Charlie's school interface 2, I'm requesting to pull Tom Preet's school interface 2 master branch into part-time Charlie's school interface 2. All right. Checking for merge conflicts, everything's good. And now I can have, you know, my a senior engineer check it out and just rip it to shreds.